So if I use my big boy voice, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because I like to move around a little bit.
Sure.
All right, so there I was, 13 years old. I'm at the plate, playing Little League, you know? Back in that day, remember that game?
Yeah.
My dad's over here, he's on the third base line, right? I'm getting ready, I'm kind of warming up, you know? And he's giving me the signals, all this kind of stuff, you know, whatever they do. And the signal is bunt. Because there's a guy on second base, there's one out, and my dad wants this guy on third, maybe we can score a run. So I'm gonna sacrifice bunt, right? So I get the signal, like, okay, got it. You know, letting everybody think I'm gonna hit the ball. And then the pitcher, he throws, and there's this high hanging curveball, right? It's just hanging in there. It's like an apple you wanna pick off the tree. And I was like, I don't wanna bunt. I wanna hit the ball. I don't wanna bunt, I wanna hit the ball. But I'd already kind of had the bat around to do the bunt, you know? So I did a hunt, right? Which is a hit and a bunt at the same time. So I get it like this, I go, boom, like that, right? I hit the ball, it goes over the first baseman's head, stays fair, goes down the line. I'm standing on on second base with a stand-up double, and the guy scores. Feeling pretty good about myself, right? So I'm standing on second base, and I'm kind of doing this, you know, I'm shaking myself off a little bit, and I kind of glance over at my dad, and my dad's like, what do you want, you know? I mean, so anyway, the next two people, I forget what happens, I don't move any further, though. I'm stuck on second, the next guy strikes out, I think, the next guy lines out. And so our dugout is on the third base side, and on Dad's team, you ran off the field, right? There was none of this loafing stuff. It was like Pete Rose kind of stuff, right? You ran. So I'm running back to the dugout to get my glove so I can get back out on second base. But I'm trying not to make eye contact with Dad, right? So I'm running back there, and I cross the third base line, and he's like, Rich? Yeah, Dad? He goes, did you get that bunt signal? I was like, yeah, Dad, I got that bunt signal. He goes, oh, so you got the bunt signal, huh? I was like, yeah, I got the bunt signal. He goes, well, I mean, you know, I don't know. I'm kind of standing there, shaking, not shaking in my boots, but you know, it's Dad, and I kind of disobeyed. So he kind of looks down at the ground, he kicks around the dirt a little bit, you know, and he goes, well, son, let me tell you something. This is what I think about that. He looks me right in the eye, right, and he goes, Rich, that was the longest damn bunt I've ever seen. He just walked away. But that was Dad, and he was that great generation. He was in the Navy in World War II. No college degree. He was literally baseball, apple pie, you know, Uncle Sam and Chevrolet, right? He worked for General Motors. He loved apple pie. He played baseball. He actually gave up his baseball career to go in the Navy, right? He was 18 years old. He was moving up into the minor leagues. And he went off to the Navy, he came back, he made it to AAA, but never made it to that next step to the professional level, right? And he gave up his career as a baseball player to go serve his country. And he had that kind of leadership, right? It wasn't a college degree, he didn't go to some fancy leadership course, but he had me, he's like, look, son, I'm gonna let you slide this time, but next time, do what I say. There was no yelling, there was no massive punishment or anything, and I got the message. I was like, got it. Thank you, Dad. So now roll ahead to 1984, right? 1984 is when I went into the Air Force Academy. So my dad got out of the Navy in 1945, so now it's 1984. It's 39 years later. I go to the Air Force Academy. I graduate in 1988. I go out and do a few things. I've flown KC-135. That was an interesting job, right? A KC-135 is an aero refueling tanker, if you don't know what it is. And so it was a good joke when I'd go to parties. Because people would say, well, what do you do? And I'd say, I'm in the Air Force. And they'd say, well, what do you do in the Air Force? I say, well, I'm a pilot. What kind of plane do you fly? I'd say, it's KC-135. Well, what's the mission of the KC-135? Pass gas. Right?
KC-97.
KC-97, all right, there you go, all right, there you go. Yeah, it's funny, they throw like lots of gas, like all day I'm just passing gas, all day. I taught at the Air Force Academy for a while, did a few more other things, but at the end of my career, I was actually in a leadership organization. So one day, I'm walking out to my car. It was out in San Antonio, Texas. It was in 2017. I'd gone to the grocery store, and my wife, she can't be here tonight. She's actually French, and she's over in France taking care of her mom right now. I don't know what you pick up. When you go to the store, what do you pick up from the store, sir? Milk and bread and stuff like that. My wife's into the whole food, plant-based eating thing. And she also has a French accent too, right? So when she calls me and she says, hey, can you go to the store and pick something up? It sounds like this. Aisha, I would like you to pick up some organic bananas, some kale, and some soy milk with no added sugar. Like, oui, madame. So I go there and I get the organic bananas and the kale and the soy milk with no added sugar. And I'm going out to my car. I'm in my military uniform. And I got my little key fob, boop, boop, like that. You know, I'm getting ready to get in my car, and I feel something on my leg, like this. I look down, and there's this little girl. She's like 3. And she looks up at me, and I carry this with me wherever I go, right? She looks up at me, and she hands me this card. And she's like, thank you for your service. And I'm like, well, you're welcome. Where'd you come from? You got a little tricycle? You know, you're just driving around the parking lot? Like, yeah, I'll go find veterans, you know, just people in the military, handing out cards, you know. So I look back over the parking lot, and, you know, I was on this side of the parking lot, and there's Mom over there, and she's got her little boy, and he's like squirming around, and she's waving, and this little girl is, and it's just like that moment, you know, you'll never forget. And here's what the card says. It says, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for dedicating yourself to our military. It means so much to have brave people fighting for our freedom. You truly make the world a better place. Thank you. Always remember, never forget. So I go sit in the car, and I'm like, am I being the best that I can be? Do I deserve that? Like, are you guys that are paying our salaries for us veterans, and we're going out there and serving you? Am I being the best officer, the best airman that I could be in the military? And I went back, a recent thing that had happened in my mind, you know, you get into this leadership world, and you start learning things, we start learning things about ourselves that are very interesting. Some of them aren't pretty. Like this mirror right over here, right? It's like a reflection in the mirror, and you go, oh, I don't know if I like that. This thing I'm learning about myself. And I had this reflection back in that moment of maybe not being the best person I could be. And here's what happened. I was being a cubicle jockey, you know, I was at a headquarters in the office job, not flying anything. So I'm there one night, it's a day like this, but it's a lot colder. It's up in Georgia, it's in February, it's 5:30 in the afternoon, it's dark, I want to go home, you know, I'm finishing up an email, and I work with this one lady, her name is Heather. And Heather was like a sister to me, like a sister I never had. And so she comes back from a meeting at 5:30, she went there about 4 o'clock, and out of the corner of my eye, I see Heather come back, and she doesn't seem to be in a good mood, and I said, hey Heather, how was that meeting? And she went like, eh. And I said, do you want to talk about it? And she said, sure. And I said, no, I didn't really want to talk about it. That's what you say to people, right? But it's 5:30. I don't want to talk about it. But okay, fine. So I'm a good guy, right? I'll be her knight in shining armor. I'm going to go over there and let her get it off her chest and do the things that she wants to do. I'm going to be a good guy. So I go over there, roll my little rolling chair over there, and just like this, right? And you're going to play Heather right now, sir, if that's okay. And I roll up right there in front of her. She starts talking about whatever it is, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, there you go, just like that. This meeting, and I don't even know what she said. But I'll never forget what happened next. So she stops talking, and she cocks her head off to the left like this, and she goes, Rich, do you care what I'm talking about? And I looked her right in the eye, because I was doing all the right things, right? I was looking at her, I was leaning in, all those things they tell you to do, you know, at the communications courses, just like this. Rich, do you care about what I'm talking about? And I looked her right back in the eye and I said, Heather, no, I don't. Because I didn't. Because you see, what I realized in that moment of time is, I didn't really care about being a good wingman, right, in a military flying formation, right? You got your leader, And you got your wingman here, and the wingman's job is to keep an eye on the other person. While this person's leading us around, I'm watching his plane, making sure he's not on fire, making sure there's no fuel leaking, just helping out. I wasn't there in that moment with Heather to be her wingman. I was there to make myself feel better about myself, wasn't I? I had a need to be seen as a good guy, but she saw right through me. Saw right through me. And then I thought, I'm not being a good wingman. I'm not being the best person I can be. I'm not being a good leader. And that's a key lesson that we have to remember in life, not just in the military, but in life in general. But it's extremely important for those of us in the military, those under arms. Now, I want to recount to you a story from a guy named James Stockdale. Does anybody remember who James Stockdale was in the political world? He was Ross Perot's vice presidential candidate. What you may not remember about him, though, is that he spent 2,763 days as the senior POW in the Vietnamese prisoner of war camps. He comes out, right? He becomes an admiral in the Navy. He's a Medal of Honor winner. He becomes president of the Citadel. He goes out to Hoover, becomes a professor of philosophy out of Hoover at the Hoover Institution at Stanford, and then he ends up being Ross Perot's vice presidential candidate. He has a number of books out. One is called Thoughts of a Philosophical Fighter Pilot. And I want to recount to you something that he said there during his speech. By the way, these have little readers in them. That's why I'm putting them on. I forgot my reading glasses, but luckily I got these things with me. Pilot glasses, right? They look kind of cool, right? Pilots got to look cool. But anyway, this is from a speech that he gave. And he gave this as he called it the melting experience, speech delivered to the graduating class of 1981 at John Carroll University in Cleveland, Ohio. It was a Catholic university, so I'm going to read you part of his speech. Father O'Malley, who is the president of the university, he says, ask that I talk about ethical notions of the sort that would qualify as growing within a person's interior self, and not simply a set of lessons learned from without. Be assured that I'm not just building a set of guideposts for prison or for a more general military setting. My conclusions are infinitely general. From that 8-year experience in those prisoner war camps, I distilled one all-purpose idea. It is a simple idea. It's an idea as old as the scriptures, an idea that is the epitome of high-mindedness, an idea that naturally and spontaneously pulls people together. It just takes root naturally. It is an idea that in this big, easy world of yakety-yak seems to violate the rules of game theory, if not of reason. It violates the idea of Adam Smith's invisible hand, our ideas of human nature, and probably the second law of thermodynamics. And that idea is, I have a coin in my pocket. If someone can come up with what that one idea that he distilled out of that idea, this is a challenge coin, it's a military challenge coin. What do you think it was? What was the one idea that he distilled out of his time there?
Be in the moment.
Close. Closer. Say again? That's right. What he says is, the one lesson that I learned is, I am my brother's keeper. Good job. He said, I'm here for my fellow man if you didn't hear from me. The same idea. A little farther on in that speech, he says, when you suddenly realize the truth that we can all become animals when cast adrift and tormented for a mere matter of months, you start having some very warm thoughts about the only life preserver within reach, that human mind, that human heart next door. You become unashamed to say what you mean when your pal is being taken out for torture, for being caught trying to get a message to you. You tap on the wall, God bless you, I love you. That's a good message for us right now, as we're going through a difficult time. I'll leave you with one last story from Stockdale, from a guy named Jim Collins, who wrote a leadership book called Good to Great. Good to Great. The Stockdale Paradox. What's the Stockdale Paradox? The Stockdale Paradox, I'll read it here off of page 86 for you from the book. The Stockdale Paradox is, Retain faith that you will prevail in the end, regardless of difficulties, and at the same time, confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be. So one day, when Jim Collins was interviewing Admiral Stockdale, he said they're having lunch together, and Admiral Stockdale looks at Jim and he says, you know, Jim, I'm the lucky guy at this table. And so Jim Collins is like, what do you mean you're the lucky guy? Like, you spent 2,673 days in a POW camp. You were tortured 19 times. You have permanent infirmities that you'll never get over. What do you mean you're the lucky guy? Like, I don't get it. And Admiral Stockdale looks him right in the eye and he says, Jim, because I know what my character is all about, and you never will. And you never will. Because he'd been through the fire. He'd been through the crucible and came out on the other side. And if you read some of his other writings from Jim Stockdale, there's one called The World of Epictetus, and he says, I wouldn't trade my prison experience for anything. Bless you, prison, for having been in my life. I moved up to Florida in the Panhandle after I retired. It's more like southern Alabama up there. That's why I'm down here with you.
I'm from Alabama.
I was picking up a little accent. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting an accent. I gotta move. So, anyway. But one of the reasons I moved there was to be with my best friend. So I bought a house in 2016, getting ready to retire in 2018. And in November of 2017, he's a retired major from the Air Force. He dies on me. I was like, dude, I bought the house. Come on. But he got pancreatic. He was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in February of 2017 at the age of 54 with a wife and a son, and he's dead 9 months later. But so he gets diagnosed in February, and right around Memorial Day of 2017, we're on the phone talking to each other. This is that same idea that Stockdale has. It's like, where does this come from? Maybe you can only have these feelings if you're actually going through the crucible, right? We're on the phone and he says, we're talking about life in general, pretty deep conversation. He says, you know, Rich? He says, I don't want to die. I wish I had some more time. But other than that, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me. When this happened, that all went away. And all this love flowed back into his life. Just gushed, right? Like the water of life. Just whoosh, right back on top of it. That's the lesson. Be each other's keeper. Especially during this difficult time. We might have to face the reality of something that none of us are really going to like. But we are going to prevail. If we don't prevail in the next 2 weeks, we'll prevail in the next 2 years. And if we don't prevail in the next 2 years, we'll prevail in the next 4 years. But we're going to prevail because we have right and truth on our side. It took Jim Stockdale 2,763 days to prove that, but he did it. Now I'll leave you with a quote from my favorite 20th century philosopher. Actually, his mom was really bright too. She'd say things like this. She'd say, Forrest, man only needs so much money, and after that, the rest is just showing off. I agree with that. The quintessential thing, we all know it, she said, Forrest, life is like a box of chocolates. What'd he say? You never know what you're going to get. But Forrest, he was kind of a shy guy. I mean, he didn't like talking in public. He was kind of shy, but I think right now he'd stand up in front of all of us. He'd stand up straight, he was in the Army. He'd look out over all of us, kind of maybe a little shy. Maybe look down, look around. He'd say, ladies and gentlemen, right about now, well, that's all I'll say about that. So God bless you. May the Lord bless and keep us. May He make His face to shine upon us during this difficult time. And may He bring us all prosperity and peace. God bless you. And God bless this greatest country on God's green earth, the United States of America.